Let's bring in NBC News senior national politics reporter Natasha Korecki. Joining me here in studio, former Democratic Congressman Joseph Crowley and Jonathan Capehart, co-host of MSNBC's The Weekend and associate editor of The Washington Post. Okay, Jonathan, you know Secretary Buttigieg. You've covered him. Politically savvy enough to have gone from small city mayor to legitimate presidential contender. You don't go to Iowa unless you're trying to set the groundwork for something.
Well, of course, of course. And you know what? He should be doing that. I mean, the runs for president take a long time, unconscionably so, but this is the world we're in. And the great thing about Secretary Pete, and as you showed in that clip,
you mean besides the facial hair?
Besides that kicking beard, I'm just going to say it, that beard is working. But what is also working is what he's saying there in Iowa. He is probably one of the party's best communicators. He takes very complicated matters and issues and boils them down into bites that people can understand.
And you know what else happens? Because I challenged the graphics team to get this ready. There were headlines this morning in Iowa newspapers. That's just two. There are several more. That's why you do it.
Right. That is exactly why you do it. You get you get those headlines, but you also start articulating a message that other Democrats can latch onto and use for their own purposes, in addition to himself.
So, Congressman, there's Governor Walz, Wes Moore. Even though Wes Moore has said, I'm not running. He said that flat out. But they've both got events in South Carolina. Surprisingly, an early and important primary state as well. Does not running look this way to you? Is he keeping his options open? What's Wes Moore doing?
There was a famous senator when asked back, I think, in 2007 whether he was running or not. I think he said he wasn't. Do you remember that one?
What's his name? Was he from Illinois?
Yes. And all of a sudden, he became the president of the United States.
Isn't that crazy?
You know, but he did it without facial hair. So I want to make sure. And I think it's kind of interesting. You see that Chris Murphy, Senator Murphy, now has a beard. Jason Crow has a beard. I don't know if Jason's considering running for president. It might be a tell now.
Right. You're running for president. He used to be losing weight. Now he's growing a beard.
Exactly. But I agree with Jonathan. I think that Pete has an incredible gift that he's able to break down and really create to message more complicated issues.
I mean, Walz isn't bad at it. Moore isn't bad at it,
and they all have military backgrounds.
That's right. And in fact, the reason I saw those headlines is because Vote Vet sent out like a whole long list of the headlines that Pete Buttigieg got. Jonathan, then you have California's Governor Gavin Newsom. He's also making headlines. He's proposing cutting health care benefits for undocumented immigrants. So if you're not here legally, you don't get those state benefits. Does that sound like someone who might be stuck with a liberal label in a lot of the country saying, I'm not really?
The short answer is yes. I think the complicating thing for the governor is going to be, how do you explain that to Democratic primary voters out there in the rest of the country? How do you explain, after years of doing things as governor, as mayor, this seeming change of heart, change of stance? I don't know, because I have not read myself all the things that play into what he's proposing. But on the face of it, just to the regular person's ears, like, oh, wait, he's moderating himself. Whether that's going to work, I don't know, because just as Secretary Pete has a reputation for being willing to go to Fox News and go to places where Democrats don't go, Governor Newsom has a reputation of being the San Francisco mayor, the governor of California, the liberal standard bearer, for all good reasons.
Yeah, I actually think you look at the transition on gender politics that he's taken already. This is kind of an add-on to that. And it's also something, unfortunately, I think many people agree with him about, even some Democrats. But it's going to mean a health crisis for some of these folks as well. It's going to expose all children if their kids can't get health insurance or can't get coverage. It really exposes all children to diseases that's not good for our country.
Yeah, let me ask you. Well, actually, let me go to Natasha, because Natasha, you've got some new reporting about this new book about President Biden that is forcing the Democratic Party's private reckoning into the public eye. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say beyond that book, the bigger point is there's a parade of books coming out. And in each one of them, there's more allegations that Joe Biden was hiding his decline, that the people around him were hiding the decline. And as that's happening, the people who are running for office right now, everyone you just showed, they are, to a certain extent, Pete Buttigieg said this yesterday, blaming Biden for the loss. Hey, he didn't get out soon enough. Hey, they hid this from us. I think, and then you have this tension. And what our story said today is there's this tension in the party with some just wanting to move on, blame everything on Biden, and not looking at the party. What really went wrong? Why did you lose these voters in places like Illinois, in places like New York, in New Jersey, where they were Democratic voters? You know, can you really blame that on Biden? I mean, what these other Democrats are saying is our problems are bigger than that, and to just steamroll ahead and not have a reckoning is not a way to win in 2028. So there's this real tension right now. I mean, we had the finance chair of the DNC going directly at all of these, Stephanie Cutter, Jen O'Malley Dillon, David Plouffe saying, hey, these high-priced consultants, they're blaming everything on Biden when they're the ones who lost this election. We had all the money, we had everything. Let's look at some other things. So there's a real tension in the party right now with how to move forward. And to the extent that there are people connected to the last administration and they're blaming Biden, you have to ask, what was their culpability? If they're saying it was Biden's fault, why weren't they asking questions? Why weren't they pushing back? Why were they, going off the record, whispering things, but not putting their name behind it? So there's a lot of questions right now. And I think there's people just want to move forward, but there's a part of the party that's saying, no, we have to clear this up.
So what's the party to do? I want to ask both of you guys really quickly in the time we have left. I mean, there is this feeling, and we saw it when we saw Joe Biden emerge onto the public stage. There were people who said, no, we don't need to do that. But to the extent that Democrats can control it, they can't control a book. Joe Biden's going to do what Joe Biden's going to do. But to the extent, Congressman, that they can control their own messaging, are they looking in the wrong place?
I think right now we have to be focused on the 2026 elections. Winning back the House of Representatives has to be paramount. And we're going to have this back and forth. You can't stop people from coming out with books. I will say this. I think that after Joe Biden's first 2 years in office and passing all that great legislation, when he continued to tack further to the left, it was an indication he was going to run again. He wanted to avoid a primary, is what Democratic incumbents or any incumbent wants to do. And that's maybe when I think the mothers and fathers of the party should have spoken up more. Are you really running? Are you not a transition? Put that aside. It's got to be right now we're talking already about presidential candidates in 2028, but we have to win the House back in 2026. And that should be we're all messaging right now.
And we shouldn't take our eye off the ball of the guy who is president of the United States right now. All of these folks who are focused on, Biden should go away. Well, how about the guy, and don't blame Biden for Donald Trump being reelected as president. Don't put that on Biden. Donald Trump, during his entire campaign, everything that we are seeing him do.
Speaking of that, take a look at that. This is the president, as you were just speaking of. He's at the Lusail Palace in Doha. There's going to be a state dinner. This is the only public part of this that we're going to see at this dinner being hosted by the Emir of Qatar. As you watch this, Jonathan, I'll let you continue, but goodness knows this trip has raised a lot of questions about this president and some would argue monetization of the presidency.
Right, raises a lot of questions, but this sort of amplifies the point I was making. Donald Trump ran on a series of promises, a series of statements, and everything we have seen him do since January 20th, he campaigned on. He told us he was going to do that. So the fact that President Biden got out of the race too late, the fact that Vice President Harris had to run a 107-day campaign and lost to the reporting earlier, does that say something about Biden and Harris, or does that say something more about the party writ large and the electorate? And certainly, no one should lay the blame for the election of Donald Trump at the feet of former President Biden when Donald Trump ran on all the things he is doing right now. And the American people said, hey, you know what? Let's give him another shot.
I mean, we're really shocked that he's monetizing the White House.
No.
He's been doing this forever. He was going to get rid of the swamp. He's raised the swamp to 30,000 feet, and he's filling that sucker with water as we speak. It is just amazing and people are saying he's doing it in broad daylight. He's doing it right in front of you, and therefore it's not so bad. No, this is corruption at the highest level.